Tonight, we drift into a story not of distant galaxies or hidden worlds beneath the sea, but of a single human being. A scientist whose thoughts and discoveries became a quiet turning point in the history of humankind. Close your eyes and imagine the hush of a world long ago, a world where answers were scarce and mysteries filled every corner of life. The stars shone as they do tonight, but their meaning was only guessed at. The earth turned beneath weary feet, yet few understood why it spun or what held the heavens in place. And in that soft silence of unknowing, there lived a mind that could not rest. This was not the mind of a warrior, nor the voice of a king. No banners flew in his name, no armies marched behind him. Instead, his power was something subtler, the restless wonder of curiosity, the courage to ask questions that no one else dared, and the patience to seek their answers with unshakable devotion. Before we close our eyes tonight, let us travel back to the quiet moments when one mind reshaped the destiny of many. Picture him beneath a dim candle flame, eyes heavy with exhaustion but still awake, scribbling symbols that danced across parchment. Outside, the night deepened, yet his thoughts carried him further into realms unseen, weaving truths that would outlast empires. Think of how delicate the balance of history is. A single idea discovered in silence can ripple outward until it touches every life on Earth. The laws that govern the falling of an apple, the bending of light, the evolution of living forms, they all began as seeds inside a mind willing to dream. And tonight, as you lie in stillness, you too are held by those very laws. Gravity presses you gently to your bed. Time moves around you, flowing steadily. Every breath you take is a gift shaped by discoveries of those who came before. The scientist we drift toward tonight is more than a name in textbooks. He is a reminder that one quiet soul, listening closely to the whispers of the universe, can open doors to eternity. His life was not free of struggle, genius rarely is. Yet his work became a lantern that has never stopped glowing, even as centuries pass. So as your thoughts begin to soften and your eyelids grow heavier, let us walk gently into his world. There is no rush here, no need to cling to details. Only the slow unfolding of a story meant to carry you deeper into rest. And if you find comfort in journeys like this, stories that soothe the mind while opening it to wonder, you are welcome to stay with us. Let your heart subscribe to these nightly drifts, not as a task, but as a quiet ritual, a way of reminding yourself that the universe always has more dreams to share. In the quiet countryside of 17th century England, where rolling meadows brushed against low stone walls, and the wind carried with it the scent of freshly turned soil, a child was born who would one day reshape the very language of the universe. His name was Isaac Newton, and though history remembers him as a towering figure of science, a master of laws and numbers, he first entered the world as something fragile, small, and uncertain. Newton was born in 1642, so tiny at birth that no one believed he would survive. They said he was no larger than a quart pot, his cries faint, his breath fragile as a flicker of candle flame. Yet that delicate flame endured. In time, it would burn into a light that reached across centuries, a light that touched the very stars. But at first, he was simply a child, frail, quiet, and alone. The farmhouse where he grew was humble. Imagine wooden beams stretching across low ceilings, their shadows shifting under the soft glow of firelight. Windows small and narrow, letting in just enough sun by day and only starlight by night. Outside, orchards stretched wide, fields of wheat and barley whispered with the wind, and an old apple tree bent gently with the weight of fruit. This was Newton's first world, not laboratories or libraries, but the living classroom of nature. As a boy, Isaac rarely joined the rowdy games of other children. He preferred solitude, often sitting quietly, staring with wonder at the sky. He would watch the clouds drift slowly across the heavens, forming shapes that seemed alive with secret meaning. He followed the shadows of trees as they moved gently over the grass, marking the slow journey of the sun across the sky. Even the simplest sights became mysteries to him. The flight of a bird, the trembling of a spider's web, the spinning sails of a windmill catching the invisible breath of air. Every detail of the world whispered a question. Why do things move as they do? What guides the sun? What draws water down into rivers and streams? He had no answers, only endless wonder. Yet within that wonder, something rare was beginning to take shape. a way of seeing not with the eyes alone, but with the imagination reaching outward, searching for invisible threads of order. Childhood for Newton was not always gentle. His father died before he was born, and his mother soon remarried, left him in the care of his grandmother. There was a hollow silence in those early years, a sense of being left behind. But solitude became the soil where his imagination grew deep roots. The stillness of his days, the universe leaned closer, as though inviting him to listen. He built small machines out of scraps of wood and string, crafting tiny windmills and water wheels. He watched how the blades turned in the breeze, how the force of water could set wheels spinning. He did not simply play, he experimented. For him, toys were not toys, but models of the world, tiny glimpses of larger truths. By night, he would gaze through the small window of his room, his eyes tracing the constellations. Stars seemed to him not random points of light, but part of some vast, unseen design. Their slow movement across the heavens was a puzzle, a code written in the silence of the night. Each shining point seemed to call to him, a reminder that there was more beyond the boundaries of the farm, more beyond the reach of human thought at that time. Even storms fascinated him. While other children trembled at the rumble of thunder or hid from the strike of lightning, Newton watched with wide eyes. He studied the way trees bent under fierce winds, how rain struck the earth in sheets, how lightning split the sky like a blade of fire. To him, storms were not threats but teachers. Chaos, he sensed, was not truly chaos, it was law, hidden and waiting to be understood. In school, his curiosity often set him apart. He was not the strongest, nor the most sociable, but he showed an unusual focus. While others memorized lessons mechanically, Newton questioned. He built sundials to measure the hours, careful and precise, placing them so the sun would tell him truths about time. A simple clock became a riddle to him. What is a second? Why does time move forward, never backward? Was it a river, always flowing? Or was it something deeper, woven into the very nature of reality? Even in these childhood questions, the shape of his future was beginning to form. For Newton, the world was not made of solid certainty. It was a dream, unfolding gently, layer by layer. Each falling apple, each drifting cloud, each ticking second of a clock was part of a story he longed to read. Take a slow, deep breath. Imagine yourself there, a child beside him in the English countryside. The year is far behind our own, yet the world feels familiar. Fields stretch wide beneath a sky of endless blue. The air carries the warmth of summer, the hum of insects, the song of birds. Beside you, Newton kneels in the grass, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick, lost in thought. His eyes, though young, carry the weight of questions too vast for his age, yet questions that one day will open the door to modern science. Loneliness never left him, but instead of breaking him, it deepened his imagination. Where other children might have sought companionship in play, Newton sought it in ideas. He befriended the invisible, the wind, the stars, the turning gears of thought. His mind became his companion, and within that silent companionship, entire worlds began to take shape. He was not yet the Newton of history, not yet the man who would write the Principia Mathematica or reveal the laws of motion. He was simply a child, staring with awe at the mysteries that surrounded him. But in that awe was a quiet persistence, a refusal to stop wondering. The world around him was limited, bounded by superstition, by the daily concerns of farming and survival. Yet Isaac Newton carried within him a vision that reached beyond. He sensed that behind the ordinary lay the extraordinary, behind every falling object lay a hidden force. Behind every flickering candle lay laws of light waiting to be known. Night after night, he returned to the stars. They became his first teachers, their slow movements across the heavens, whispering to him of a universe ordered yet mysterious. To many, the night sky was a tapestry of myths and stories, but to Newton, it was a problem to be solved, not to destroy its beauty, but to deepen it, to find the truth woven into its fabric. And so, from the beginning, curiosity was his guiding star. It was not the curiosity of idle distraction, but of devotion, patient and enduring. Each question pulled him further, like a current drawing him into deep waters. He did not resist. He drifted willingly, surrendering to the mystery. Take another deep, slow breath. Imagine the child Newton once was small, quiet, eyes wide with wonder. The world was immense around him, yet he dared to reach for its hidden patterns. And though he could not yet know it, those patterns would one day change the way humanity understood itself. And so, with every question, his mind drifted further into the unknown before Isaac Newton opened his eyes to the mysteries of nature. The world itself was still wrapped in shadows. It was a time of change, caught between the fading echoes of medieval thought and the trembling dawn of modern science. To understand the wonder of his journey, we must first drift backward into that earlier world, a place where the universe was not yet measured, where the stars were not yet equations, and where the earth itself seemed an uncertain home. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself in that world of uncertainty. The year was the mid-17th century. In villages across Europe, the days were ruled by church bells and the cycles of the seasons. The rhythms of life were simple. Sunrise meant work in the fields, and nightfall meant retreat to candlelight. Beyond these daily tasks, the larger universe remained a mystery. Wrapped in superstition, myth, and fragments of philosophy carried from ancient Greece and Rome. For centuries, the teachings of Aristotle had been treated as unquestionable truth. According to his vision, the earth was at the center of the universe, unmoving, heavy, and eternal. Around it, the sun, the moon, and the stars revolved in perfect circles, guided by divine order. The heavens were thought to be made of a special, incorruptible substance, forever pure, while the world below, the realm of humans, plants and animals, was messy, changing, and flawed. To most people, this made perfect sense. The sky appeared unchanging, steady, while the earth was filled with decay and change. But the cost of this belief was heavy. It locked the human imagination into cages, suggesting that the truth had already been found. That all questions had already been answered. For nearly 2,000 years, scholars accepted this picture of reality as complete, yet cracks were already forming. A century before Newton, Nicolaus Copernicus had dared to suggest that the Earth was not the center at all, but rather circled the sun, along with other planets. Later, Galileo Galilei raised his telescope to the heavens and found moons circling Jupiter, blemishes on the sun, and craters on the moon, proof that the heavens were not perfect after all. These discoveries unsettled the world. If the Earth was not the center, what did that mean for humanity's place in the cosmos? If the heavens were flawed, what did that say about creation itself? But even with Copernicus and Galileo, the picture was incomplete. Why did planets move in their strange orbits? Why did objects fall to the ground, but the moon remained above? Why did tides rise and fall, pulled by invisible hands? The answers were missing. The universe in those days was a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Life for ordinary people was filled with uncertainty as well. Disease swept through towns without warning. Wars scarred the land and storms destroyed harvests. Without a clear understanding of nature's laws, these events were seen as punishments or omens. A comet streaking across the night sky was not a natural phenomenon but a sign of doom. A sudden illness was not the result of unseen microbes, but of divine will or curses. Fear and wonder mixed together, shaping a fragile relationship between humans and the cosmos. Take another deep breath, and picture yourself standing in a village square of that time. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth. People gather under flickering lanterns, whispering about strange lights in the heavens or the sudden trembling of the ground. They do not speak of gravity or natural forces. Those words hold no meaning for them. Instead, they tell stories of spirits, gods, and hidden powers beyond their control. Even the most learned scholars struggled to explain the simplest of questions. Why did an apple fall from a tree? Why did it not hover in the air, or float upward instead? Why did the tides of the ocean follow the moon, a body so far away? The tools of explanation were crude philosophy without mathematics, observation without deeper theory. It is important to remember that this was not ignorance born of laziness. Humanity had always sought answers, always tried to make sense of the world. But without the right concepts, the right language, the right imagination, it could only move in circles, much like the orbits they believed were perfect and eternal. And yet, beneath this uncertainty, the world was stirring. Telescopes were beginning to reveal new wonders. Experiments with prisms showed that light could be split into colors. Scholars whispered about invisible forces, though none could describe them clearly. It was as though the curtain of the universe was beginning to tremble, ready to be drawn back, waiting for someone with patience enough to look deeper. This was the world Isaac Newton was born into, a world rich with questions, trembling with contradictions, and desperate for clarity. A world that had glimpsed the truth but could not yet grasp it. A world where science was still in its infancy, fragile but eager, like a child staring into the night sky for the very first time. Imagine yourself lying beneath those same stars in the 17th century. You do not know about galaxies or black holes. You do not know about atoms or the bending of space-time. All you see are the lights above you, mysterious and eternal. You feel the pull of gravity every time you walk, but you do not yet have a name for it. You live by its laws, yet remain blind to their meaning. And in this vast uncertainty, one mind began to form questions sharper than those before. Newton would grow into this world not as a man content with old answers, but as one who would demand new ones. He would take the whispers of Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler and weave them into a language that could be understood. He would find the missing pieces of the puzzle, and in doing so, change history forever. But in the time before his discoveries, the world floated in twilight, half lit by the glow of ancient beliefs, half shadowed by unanswered mysteries. It was a world waiting, silently, for the spark of curiosity to catch fire. Take one more slow, steady breath. Hold the image of that uncertain world in your mind. The candlelit villages, the superstition, the fragile beginnings of science. Feel the tension between fear and wonder, between ignorance and the hunger for knowledge. This is the world we leave behind now as we follow Newton deeper into his journey. And so, in the quiet of history, we prepare to step into the moment when mystery would begin to unfold into law. The world before Newton was heavy with questions, like a night sky filled with stars yet dimmed by clouds. And then, slowly, those clouds began to part. For Isaac Newton, the first breakthroughs did not arrive with the blare of trumpets, nor the applause of crowds. They began in silence in candlelit rooms, in long hours of solitude, in the unshakable patience of a mind unwilling to stop wondering. He was still a young man, studying at Cambridge, when the seeds of his discoveries began to take root. The plague had swept across England, forcing the university to close. Students returned to their homes, and Newton retreated to Walsert Manor, the quiet farmhouse where he had once gazed at the stars as a child. What might have been an interruption for others became, for him, a season of intense thought, a retreat not into idleness, but into a world of questions and ideas. Picture him there, a solitary figure beneath the apple trees. Parchment and quill in hand, candle burning late into the night. Outside, the fields stretched wide and silent. The world beyond was gripped by fear and disease, yet Newton's mind wandered freely, drifting into realms unseen. It was here, in this period historians would later call his honest mirabilis, his year of wonders, that he began to piece together insights that would forever reshape human understanding. There is a story often told, and often simplified, about an apple falling from a tree. It has been embroidered by time, softened into a symbol rather than a memory. Yet within it lies a truth. Newton, sitting in his orchard, saw the fall of an apple not as a small, ordinary event, but as a question. Why does the apple fall? Why does it not float upward or hover in midair? The easy answer was that it was natural for objects to fall, but Newton was unsatisfied. He imagined not just the apple's brief drop, but the unseen pull that guided it. What if that same pull reached farther than the orchard, farther than the earth itself? What if the very moon above, circling endlessly, was obeying the same law that drew the apple down? In this single moment of imagination, the earth and the heavens were joined. No longer were the stars and planets governed by one set of rules and earthly objects by another. All of reality, Newton suspected, was bound by the same invisible thread. Take a deep breath and imagine the weight of that realization that the universe itself might be one. Its laws consistent and eternal. But Newton's curiosity did not rest in gravity alone. In his small, darkened room, he carried out experiments with prisms. Passing a beam of sunlight through the glass, he watched as it spread into a rainbow of colors. To most, this was a curiosity, a trick of light. To Newton, it was revelation. He realized that light was not pure and uniform, but composed of many colors blended together. White light, he discovered, was not the beginning, but the sum of all colors. By carefully rejoining the separated rays, he proved that the rainbow was not illusion, but the true nature of light revealed. The implications were profound. For centuries, light had been a mystery wrapped in myth and metaphor. Now, it became something measurable, something with structure. The very beams that warmed the earth and lit the human eye were no longer beyond understanding. They were part of the same universe, subject to laws waiting to be discovered. As Newton's thoughts deepened, he began to ask, what makes objects move, and what keeps them in motion? Aristotle had said that objects naturally come to rest, that a force is always needed to sustain movement. But Galileo had already chipped at this idea, showing that objects once in motion continue unless something slows them down. Newton took these insights and gave them form. He wrote of 3 simple laws, laws so elegant and enduring that they still shape every corner of physics today. An object at rest remains at rest, and an object in motion continues in motion unless acted upon by another force. The force on an object is equal to its mass multiplied by its acceleration. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. These were not just words. They were the keys to unlock everything from the flight of a bird to the turning of planets to the fall of a stone. They gave language to the invisible, structure to the unseen. Imagine now the quiet thrill of those moments, lines drawn in ink across parchment, yet destined to echo through centuries. Each law was like a lullaby written for the universe itself, soft but powerful, carrying truths too vast to fade. With each breakthrough, Newton was not simply solving puzzles. He was changing how humanity saw reality. The apple and the moon, the prism and the rainbow, the bird and the planet, all were united by the same principles. The heavens were not divine and untouchable, separate from the earth. They were kin to the world we lived in, governed by the same laws, bound by the same rhythms. This was a revolution not of noise, but of quiet revelation. In Newton's mind, the universe transformed from a collection of mysteries into a harmonious whole. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where others saw chance, he saw law. Take another slow breath and imagine the wonder of such vision, the veil lifting. The world unfolding not as confusion, but as song. Newton did not seek glory for these insights, at least not at first. He was secretive, cautious, even shy. His discoveries remained with him, unspoken, for years. He feared criticism, feared misunderstanding, feared the weight of exposing such vast truths to the world too soon. And so he returned again and again to his papers, refining, questioning, testing. This solitude, though heavy at times, became his companion. The silence of Woolsthorpe, the dim glow of candlelight, the endless night sky above all, became part of his laboratory. He was not racing against time or rivals. He was drifting, slowly, deeply, into the heart of mystery. And it was here that his first breakthroughs took root. Invisible threads began to connect, weaving a tapestry of thought that no one before him had seen so clearly. The apple falling, the moon circling, the rainbow unfolding, each a clue, each a whisper, each a promise that the universe could be known. When we look back now, it seems inevitable, as though these discoveries were always waiting for Newton to write them down. But in truth, they were fragile, uncertain, as delicate as the candle flame that lit his nights. Each idea was a leap, each conclusion a risk, yet he made them quietly, patiently, with the same devotion he had shown as a curious child staring at the stars. And in doing so, he began to reshape not only science, but the very way humanity thought of itself. No longer were we small creatures in a chaotic, unpredictable world. We were beings who could glimpse the order behind the veil. The universe was vast, but it was not unknowable. It was governed by laws, laws that could be discovered, written, and shared. Take one more gentle breath, and let that thought settle. That beneath the apparent randomness of life lies a deep order, waiting for patient eyes to see it. And so, in those first breakthroughs, Isaac Newton crossed a threshold. From the lonely child staring at shadows, he had become the thinker whose imagination could reach beyond Earth itself. The questions that had haunted humanity for centuries were beginning to find answers. Soft but steady, like stars emerging one by one in the night sky. And so, with every discovery, his mind drifted even further into the unknown. The light of discovery, no matter how brilliant, casts long shadows. For Isaac Newton, the triumph of his mind was matched by the weight of his solitude. To peer so deeply into the fabric of reality was not without cost. His breakthroughs glowed like stars, but stars are often born in silence, in distance, in the cold. Imagine him seated once more in his chamber at Cambridge, stacks of papers surrounding him like fragile fortresses. Ink-stained fingers, weary eyes, a body often neglected for the sake of thought. The world outside bustled with merchants, farmers, and neighbors who laughed in taverns and gathered at hearths. Newton, however, drifted in another sphere, a place where gravity and light were companions. And where equations spoke louder than human voices. Newton was not a man eager for fame. He guarded his ideas as though they were tender seedlings, easily crushed by careless footsteps. Years passed before he revealed his findings on light or motion. Even then, he often shared reluctantly, coaxed by friends or compelled by circumstance. This secrecy was not only caution, it was fear. Fear of criticism, of ridicule, of being misunderstood. Remembered the sting of rejection from earlier disputes, when bold claims had been dismissed. His nature inclined him towards solitude, and so he chose it again and again. But solitude has two faces. One face is gentle, like the stillness of night that nurtures quiet thought. The other is heavy, a silence that grows thick and isolating. Newton lived between these two, blessed and burdened in equal measure. Eventually, his silence could not last. Ideas so powerful could not remain hidden forever. When Newton's discoveries reached the broader world, they brought admiration, but also opposition. His work on light, for instance, was challenged fiercely. Some scholars refused to believe that white light was a mixture of colors. To them, Newton's claims seemed heretical, a threat to long-held beliefs. Pamphlets were published, debates raged, letters flew across Europe. Newton, sensitive to criticism, withdrew further. At times, the weight of dispute drove him to the edge of despair. The same occurred in his later quarrels with Leibniz over the invention of calculus. Both men had arrived at similar insights, but who had been first? Accusations were hurled, reputations tarnished, friendships broken. Newton, proud and unyielding, fought fiercely, unwilling to concede. What had begun as a shared exploration of mathematics turned into one of history's most bitter feuds. Imagine for a moment the loneliness of such battles. To hold truths within your hands, yet find them doubted, twisted, or claimed by others. Too long for recognition, yet shrink from the scrutiny it required. For Newton, the glory of discovery was often followed by the ache of conflict. Brilliance can be a heavy crown, and Newton bore it in ways that strained his spirit. He suffered periods of melancholy, times when his mind seemed to fracture under its own intensity. He withdrew from friends, neglected his health, drifted into silence so profound that some feared he had lost himself entirely. Historians believe he endured what we might now call depression or breakdowns. In his letters, one can sense a man wrestling not only with equations, but with his own fragile humanity. The very mind that soared into the cosmos could also trap him in cages of fear and doubt. And yet, even in those shadows, he returned again and again to the steady work of thought. Like the moon emerging from clouds, his mind found its way back to light. The struggle did not destroy him, it shaped him, reminding us that even the greatest geniuses remain human, bound by the same frailties as all. Newton's dedication left little space for the ordinary joys of life. He never married. He had few close companions. Meals were often forgotten, sleep neglected, health ignored. His heart, it seemed, belonged not to people, but to questions. There is a quiet sadness in this image, a man who unlocked the secrets of the heavens, yet never truly shared the warmth of human love. In the silence of his chambers, he drifted deeper into solitude, his companionship found in books, in prisms, in the fall of apples, in the ticking of clocks. Take a slow breath and imagine the weight of such devotion. to give oneself so fully to thought that the rhythms of ordinary life fade away. For some, this might seem tragic. For Newton, it was simply the path his spirit followed. Yet Newton's solitude was not empty. He filled it with not only science, but also with faith. To him, the universe was not merely mechanical. It was the creation of a divine mind, a cosmic order reflecting the wisdom of God. He studied scripture as intently as he studied mathematics. In his solitude, he sought not only the laws of motion, but the meaning of existence itself. This, too, deepened his loneliness. His religious views often strayed from the orthodox, putting him at odds with the church. He questioned doctrines, wrestled with mysteries, and kept many of his beliefs hidden for fear of persecution. The same secrecy that cloaked his science cloaked his faith. And so Newton's solitude grew a man living between worlds, too radical for some, too cautious for others, belonging fully to neither. There is a paradox in Newton's story, one that whispers to us across centuries. His discoveries brought humanity together under a shared vision of the universe. He revealed that the same laws governed all apple and moon, earth and sky, light and shadow. Yet the man who revealed unity lived much of his life apart, walled away by solitude, suspicion, and pride. It is as though the universe demanded balance. The gift of vision was paired with the burden of loneliness. To hold the stars in his imagination, Newton had to walk much of his earthly path alone. Take another gentle breath, and let that paradox settle in your heart. Greatness often comes with shadows. Brilliance often walks hand in hand with isolation. And yet, for all the struggles Newton endured, he did not abandon his quest, nor let the weight of loneliness silence him completely. His resilience was quiet, steady, like the pull of gravity itself, unseen, but unyielding. Even in his darkest hours, the universe remained his companion. The moon still circled, the stars still burned, the prism still revealed its rainbow. These truths comforted him, anchoring him when human disputes and inner storms threatened to pull him away. His life reminds us that solitude, while heavy, can also be fertile. Out of his loneliness grew discoveries that would change the course of history. Out of his struggles emerged laws that continued to guide rockets to the stars and satellites around the Earth. Take a deep breath, close your eyes. Imagine the lonely figure of Newton at his desk, candle flickering, the world asleep around him. His heart is heavy, yet his mind drifts on, reaching beyond the silence of his room into the endless night sky. In his solitude, he teaches us something profound, that even in isolation, even in struggle, the spark of curiosity can endure. That greatness is not the absence of pain, but the quiet persistence that carries us through it. And so, through loneliness and struggle, Isaac Newton continued his journey, a journey that would not only reveal the laws of the universe, but also remind humanity of the resilience within its own fragile spirit. And with every hardship, his mind drifted further still, toward discoveries that would bind heaven and earth with threads of light and gravity. The genius of Newton could not remain hidden forever. However much he shrouded himself in silence, however tightly he guarded his papers, the light of his discoveries eventually slipped beyond his chambers and into the wider world. And once it escaped, it was like the slow unveiling of dawn, uncertain at first. Filled with shadows and doubts, but destined to rise. It began quietly, as such revolutions often do. A lecture here, a letter there, fragments of thought shared among scholars who were themselves hungry for answers. The Royal Society, that gathering of minds in London, became the first echo chamber for Newton's work. His papers on light, circulated cautiously, sparked both fascination and controversy. Some read his words with awe, as though touching a new map of the cosmos. Others scoffed, unwilling to abandon old beliefs. The world had long trusted Aristotle's ancient wisdom, believing that heavy objects fell faster than light ones, that the heavens were made of some perfect, immutable substance. To be told otherwise, to hear that the same force that pulled an apple to the ground also tethered the moon to its orbit, was almost unthinkable. It was not merely science Newton was changing. It was the very imagination of humankind. And so the whispers grew. Some praised him as a mind unlike any other. Some dismissed him as a dangerous radical. All felt the tremor of something new approaching, like the first faint glow before sunrise. In time, Newton gathered his discoveries into a single work, Philosophia, Naturaliz Principia Mathematica, or simply the Principia. Its publication in 1687 was not a sudden explosion of light, but rather the steady kindling of a fire that would burn for centuries. The Principia was dense, written in the austere language of geometry and proof. It was not a book for casual readers, but for those with patience, skill, and the discipline to follow Newton's mind step by step. And yet even its difficulty became a kind of legend. Scholars who wrestled with its pages spoke of it with reverence, like pilgrims returning from a sacred journey. Within its pages lay truths that shattered old walls: the laws of motion, the universal law of gravitation, a universe no longer divided between heaven and earth, but bound together by the same invisible threads. It was a revelation as profound as any scripture, and it began to ripple outward, touching the imagination of those ready to receive it. But acceptance did not come swiftly, for many Newton's vision seemed too radical, too precise, too coldly mathematical. The old worldview was familiar, comforting, infused with mystery and philosophy. Newton's universe was mechanical, predictable, a vast clock whose gears could be measured and understood. There were debates in universities, arguments in the pages of scholarly journals, whispered conversations in coffee houses, where ideas spread like wildfire. Some embraced Newton eagerly, finding in his laws a beauty greater than myth. Others resisted, clinging to Aristotle or Descartes, unwilling to yield centuries of belief to this solitary Englishman. Yet slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn. The predictions of Newton's equations worked. Planets moved where he said they would. Objects fell as he calculated. Ships navigated by his principles. The world, despite its reluctance, could not deny the quiet power of truth. Imagine the chorus of voices in that era, some mocking, some astonished, some fearful. A professor in Paris shaking his head at the notion that gravity reached across the void. A sailor marveling that his ship's course matched Newton's predictions. A student in a dimly lit chamber, copying equations by candlelight, feeling the thrill of glimpsing something eternal. The debates were not merely intellectual. They were emotional, almost spiritual. For Newton's universe was not just new science, it was a new way of being human. To realize that we are not separate from the heavens, but woven into the same laws that guide the stars, was to feel at once smaller and more infinite. Like dawn breaking after a long night, the world slowly began to see. At first, there were murmurs of disbelief, debates in dimly lit halls, and voices rising in resistance. Some clung to the old ways, unwilling to let go of familiar beliefs. Others leaned forward, their eyes wide, sensing that something vast was unfolding before them. Imagine yourself standing there, watching history turn, a crowd gathered, the air thick with uncertainty, the world teetering between doubt and awakening. You were part of that moment, when ideas that once lived only in the solitude of one mind begin to ripple outward, touching countless lives. And so, step by step, the resistance softened, the debates gave way to quiet acceptance, and the impossible began to feel inevitable. What was once a whisper in the dark became a language spoken by all who longed to understand the universe. Printers copied his works. Translators carried his words into new languages. Teachers explained his principles to curious students. The torch of understanding passed from hand to hand, each bearer adding their own light. It was not a sudden revolution, but a gradual illumination. Candle lit here, a lantern there, until the world found itself bathed in a new glow. The laws of motion, once scribbled in solitude, now belonged to humanity itself. As Newton's fame grew, so too did the image of the scientist, no longer merely a tinkerer or philosopher, but a seeker of universal truths. He became a symbol of what the human mind could achieve when it dared to ask, to measure, to imagine. And yet, even as the world noticed, Newton himself remained elusive, almost ghost-like, rarely sought attention, rarely courted fame. His discovery spoke louder than his voice ever could. To the world, he was a giant. To himself, he was still a solitary mind, chasing the mysteries of creation. Take a deep breath. Imagine yourself in that time, a candlelit room, pages of the Principia open before you, the ink still fresh, the ideas still new. You are standing at the threshold of a new world, watching the old beliefs fade as a new dawn rises. The world was beginning to notice, slowly, hesitantly, but irresistibly. The age of Newton had arrived, and humanity would never see the universe in the same way again. And so, with the quiet persistence of light spreading through darkness, Newton's vision took root in the hearts and minds of all who dared to look upward in wonder. The discoveries of Isaac Newton were not simply equations or diagrams. They were a doorway, a curtain pulled back to reveal a stage far larger than anyone had imagined. Before him, the universe was a puzzle half-glimpsed, painted with fragments of philosophy and myth. After him, it became a coherent vision, a great symphony whose notes could be written, measured, and understood. And yet, Newton did not present his vision with thunder or lightning. His revelation was quiet, precise, almost whisper-like. What he offered the world was not just a new theory, but a new way of seeing reality itself. The story of the falling apple, whether apocryphal or true, remains the simplest metaphor for his discovery. One evening, as the tale goes, Newton watched an apple drop from a branch. Others might have thought nothing of it. Fruit falls, always has. But Newton's mind, tuned like a dreamer's ear, heard something deeper in that motion. Why did the apple fall straight down, rather than sideways or upward? What invisible hand drew it to earth? And more than that, if this hand reached to the apple, might it also reach to the moon, the planets, the stars? And so, out of a quiet observation, he built a bridge between the orchard and the cosmos. The same law that tugged an apple earthward was the law that bound the moon in orbit, that guided the planets in their stately dance around the sun. No longer were heaven and earth divided realms. They were one. It was a vision of unity so profound that it stitched together the fabric of reality itself. Newton's law of gravity is often written as a formula, but its essence is something gentler, the idea that everything is connected by invisible threads. Every grain of sand, every mountain, every ocean, every star is quietly tugging at every other, bound together in a cosmic embrace.
Odd way.
You and I, as we breathe, are drawn toward the earth, and the earth is drawn toward us. The moon pulls at the sea, raising tides that whisper across shorelines. The sun gathers planets into its warmth, holding them in orbit like a parent holding children close. It is not a violent force, but a patient one. Silent, unseen, unceasing. A lullaby written into the structure of the universe, guiding all things in their eternal motion. Before Newton, the heavens were imagined as divine and mysterious, ruled by forces beyond human comprehension. After Newton, they became legible, as though someone had revealed the gears of a vast clock. But this clock was not cold or mechanical in the ordinary sense. It was elegant, harmonious, almost musical. Each planet's orbit was a note in a cosmic song. Each falling stone was a beat in the rhythm of existence. To study the universe was no longer to peer into chaos, but to listen for its melody. In this vision, reality itself became both simpler and more wondrous. For what could be more beautiful than to know that the very same law that lets an apple fall is the one that steadies the stars? Newton's discovery gave rise to a strange and quiet reverence. Some saw in his gravity the very hand of God weaving creation together with invisible bonds. Others, less religious, saw in it the triumph of reason, proof that the human mind could pierce the veil of mystery and find order. But whether taken as divine or mathematical, the impact was the same. Humanity now lived in a universe that was vast, connected, and knowable. The night sky was no longer an untouchable mystery. It was a map. Imagine the shift in perspective to look up at the moon and know, not merely guess, why it remained suspended there. To gaze at the planets and realize that their journeys were not random, but choreographed by a single, universal rule. It was as though the cosmos itself had leaned down to whisper its secrets, and Newton had been the first to hear. What does it mean to live in a Newtonian universe? It means to know that we are part of a vast continuum, bound not by walls between heaven and earth, but by threads that weave everything together. A child dropping a pebble into a pond, a comet streaking across the night, the earth turning beneath our feet, all are chapters in the same story. Motion itself is no longer a riddle, but a gentle unfolding of rules that hold across the entire expanse of space. This was more than science. It was a redefinition of reality. Humanity stepped out of myth and into law, not the law of kings or parliaments, but the law written into the very bones of creation. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself beneath the night sky of Newton's world. The stars above, the earth beneath, the air around you all connected, all moving together in a silent harmony. The invisible force that cradles the moon is the same force that steadies your body as you rest. In that thought lies both humility and wonder. For we are small, yes, but never separate. We are part of the great embrace of gravity, threads in the endless tapestry of the cosmos. Newton's discovery was not the end of science, but the beginning of a new kind of seeing. Others would come later. Einstein with his relativity, Darwin with his evolution, each reshaping our vision of reality again. But Newton's gift was the first great unifying whisper. Everything is connected. And so, his vision continues to live with us even now. Each time we drop a stone into water, each time we watch the tides roll in, each time we look up and see the moon, we are living inside Newton's dream. There are moments in history when reality seems to shift, not with explosions or battles, but with the silent unfolding of an idea. A single mind, in a solitary moment of clarity, steps through a doorway no one else can yet see. When that door opens, the world on the other side is larger, more luminous, more interconnected than the world that came before. For Isaac Newton, that doorway was the discovery of a hidden law, a law not carved into stone tablets, but woven into the very breath of existence. It was gravity, the unseen thread binding everything together. But to speak of gravity only as a force is to miss the poetry of it. Newton's vision was not merely a new formula, it was a new way of living inside the universe. He taught us that the apple falling in an orchard and the moon circling the earth are not separate stories. They are the same story, written on different pages of the same cosmic book. Imagine him in the orchard, beneath the English sun, watching fruit drop from a branch. To others, it was a familiar sight, ordinary, almost forgettable. Apples had fallen since the beginning of time. But Newton's mind did not let it pass. He asked, why? Why always downward? What pulls it? What summons it? What invisible hand guides it to Earth's heart? Then, with the boldness of a dreamer, he asked a stranger question still. If this hand reaches to the apple, does it also stretch to the moon? And there it was, a bridge between the everyday and the infinite. The falling fruit and the circling moon were no longer distant cousins. They were siblings, joined by the same invisible thread. With that realization, the universe became one. Heaven and earth, once thought to be divided realms, were woven into a single fabric. Newton revealed that everything in existence is bound by unseen ties. Not chains, not ropes, but soft invisible tethers, like the gossamer strands of a spider's web stretched across the cosmos. Every pebble dropped into a river, every mountain rising from the earth, every planet sweeping through space, all are caught in this quiet embrace. You, lying in your bed tonight, are gently pressed to the earth by the same law that holds Saturn in its orbit. The same law that calls the tides to shore reaches also into your body, cradling you without your awareness. Gravity is not a thunderous command. It is a whisper, a constant persuasion, a lullaby that says, stay close, belong, do not drift too far away. Before Newton, the heavens were mysterious, often explained by myth or divine will. Stars burned because gods decreed it. Planets wandered because celestial beings pushed them. The world seemed divided between what was earthly and what was heavenly. Newton replaced myth with harmony. He showed that the cosmos was not chaotic, but orderly, as if built upon the ticking of a grand clock. Each gear was a planet, each pendulum a moon, each turning spoke a comet streaking across the night. But this was no cold, mechanical machine. It was elegant, rhythmic, musical. The planets' orbits were notes in a song too vast for human ears to fully hear. To study Newton's universe was to sit in the audience of a cosmic symphony and begin, for the first time, to recognize the melody. Newton's law was not loud. It did not shout. Instead, it seeped quietly into human thought, reshaping everything. Suddenly, the moon was not a lantern hung in the sky, but a dancer held by Earth's embrace. The tides were not mysteries, but the ocean's answer to the moon's pull. Even a child tossing a stone could now feel the weight of cosmic truth in the ripples that followed. It was, in its own way, a revolution, but a tender one. A revolution that reassured humanity that the universe was not chaos, but kinship, not randomness, but relation. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Imagine yourself holding an apple in your hand. Feel its weight pressing against your palm. That weight is gravity whispering to you. Now lift your gaze to the night sky and find a star. That star is whispering too, though its voice is softer, more distant. Yet the law is the same. The apple, the star, and even you bound together, speaking the same quiet language. That was Newton's gift, the realization that everything belongs. Everything leans toward everything else. Everything is touched by everything else. Newton did more than solve a puzzle. He gave humanity new eyes. After him, to look at the sky was no longer to gaze into mystery, but into order, elegance, connection. His discovery was not just about planets and stars, but about how we perceive reality itself. To live in a Newtonian universe was to know with calm certainty that you were part of a whole. That every step you took, every stone that fell, every tide that turned, was part of the same unfolding story. It was not just science. It was philosophy, poetry, comfort. Take a deep breath. Let your mind wander outward. Picture yourself standing under the night sky, the earth beneath your feet, the moon above, stars stretching endlessly. All of it connected, all of it in motion. All of it bound by an invisible thread. And within that thought, notice how small you are, yet how deeply woven into the fabric of everything. You are not separate. You are part of the great embrace. Newton's vision was the first great whisper of unity, a reminder that the same laws cradle both the apple in the orchard and the planets in their orbits. Others would come later, reshaping our view of reality again. Einstein, bending time, Darwin, unfolding life. But Newton's gift remains timeless. He showed us that reality itself is one grand tapestry, that the everyday and the eternal are not strangers, but siblings, that the universe, vast and cold though it may seem, is held together by bonds of belonging. And so, his vision endures. Each time you drop a pebble, each time you see the moon, each time you feel the earth steady beneath you, you are still living in Newton's dream. Ideas, once born, are not confined to the moment of discovery. They travel, soft and unseen, like ripples on a still pond. One stone falls into the water, but the waves move outward endlessly, touching shores the stone will never see. Newton's revelation was such a stone. His vision of gravity, of motion, of the universe's quiet order, did not end in his lifetime. It traveled across oceans, across centuries, into the hands of sailors, dreamers, scholars, and children. His idea became not only a truth to study, but a companion to humanity itself, whispering guidance whenever a new frontier appeared. Take another slow breath. Feel how ideas travel, just like whispers through eternity. Long before rockets pierced the sky, humanity sought to cross the oceans. The seas were vast, merciless, full of uncertainty. Sailors once relied only on stars, rough maps, and instinct. But with Newton's laws of motion and universal gravitation, the seas became more predictable, more navigable. Astronomers and navigators used his equations to chart the paths of the moon and planets. The position of a ship could now be measured with astonishing accuracy. The waves of discovery carried explorers farther than before to new continents, new trade routes, new encounters between civilizations. Newton's ripples were there, silent, guiding every compass needle, steadying every captain's hand. Cartographers began to redraw the world, their maps more precise than ever. What was once vague coastline became sharp. What was once mystery became known. The earth itself, once thought flat or irregular, revealed itself as a near-perfect sphere, held together by the invisible pull of gravity. Every corrected map was a quiet hymn to Newton's insight. The world was becoming less a puzzle of shadows and more a clarified whole, and humanity, step by step, could walk with greater certainty upon it. The Industrial Revolution roared like a furnace, but beneath its fire lay Newton's laws. Steam engines, locomotives, and machinery all obeyed his principles of force and motion. Engineers, whether they named him or not, worked under his gaze. Every spinning wheel, every piston, every gear turning was another ripple of his work. Even the trains that thundered across the countryside carried his unseen signature. For without the certainty of motion, of predictable force, of gravity's pull, such inventions could not have been imagined, let alone built. The age of machines was quietly, also, the age of Newton. Centuries after Newton first imagined the invisible threads holding planets in place, humanity looked upward again, not just at the moon, but at the sky itself. The dream of flight, long held by myth and legend, became reality only through an understanding of forces, of lift, drag, momentum. When the Wright brothers lifted their fragile machine into the air, they were not defying Newton, they were honoring him. For every curve of their wings, every calculation of weight and motion was guided by his laws. They did not escape gravity. They learned to dance with it. And so, the ripples spread further, upward now, toward the stars. The greatest leap came when humanity left Earth entirely. Rockets, massive and fiery, rose through the atmosphere not by magic, but by the obedience of motion. Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, was no longer a classroom lesson, but a pillar of spaceflight. Each launch, each trembling rocket leaving the ground, was Newton's vision unfolding in spectacular fire and smoke. The same mind that once wondered about apples and moons had, across centuries, laid the foundation for reaching beyond the sky. The Apollo missions to the moon were not only triumphs of technology, they were echoes of Newton's whispers. When astronauts set foot upon lunar soil, they carried with them the quiet truth that began in an orchard centuries before. Today, as you listen to stories in the quiet of night, satellites drift silently above. They orbit, balanced delicately between Earth's pull and their own forward motion, a harmony predicted by Newton long ago. These satellites carry voices, images, knowledge, linking continents in a heartbeat. Each message, each signal, crossing oceans in seconds, is yet another ripple of Newton's law, proof that his vision still moves, still shapes, still holds. But the ripples were not only scientific, they reached into philosophy, art, and the human spirit. Newton's universe of harmony inspired poets to imagine the stars as part of a grand design. Philosophers used his laws as metaphors for justice, morality, and society's balance. Artists painted not only beauty, but order, the symmetry of the cosmos reflected in brushstrokes and architecture. Ideas do not stay in one place. They seep, they spread, they mingle with dreams. Newton's discovery became part of humanity's inner world, shaping not only machines, but imaginations. And so, across centuries, his work rippled outward. From wooden ships braving storms to rockets piercing the heavens, from paper maps to glowing screens, from poets' verses to astronauts' steps, all of it threads woven into a single story that began with the question, why does the apple fall? Ripples of his vision continue. They move through classrooms where children learn of planets and orbits. They move through laboratories where rockets are tested. They move through satellites that carry songs across the world. They move through you. As you drift into sleep tonight, your body gently held to earth by the very law he revealed. The scientist is gone, but his ripples remain, shimmering forever across the waters of time. When we speak of Newton or any scientist whose vision reshaped the world, we often imagine a figure carved from stone. An eternal genius, always certain, always perfect. But the truth is gentler, softer, more fragile. Behind the equations and discoveries lived a man who carried doubts, loneliness, and fears. His brilliance did not erase his humanity. It deepened it. Like all of us, he awoke some mornings unsure of himself. Like all of us, he carried memories that haunted him and small habits that comforted him. To remember the human side of Newton is to see that greatness is not born of perfection, but of persistence within imperfection. Newton was not born into comfort. His father died before he was born, leaving his mother a widow and the infant Isaac a child without a father's presence. When his mother remarried, she left young Isaac in the care of his grandmother. This wound of abandonment shaped him deeply. Even as he grew into one of the brightest minds in history, he carried within him the quiet ache of being left behind. He often felt apart, distant, unsure how to belong among others. The orchard where he later pondered falling apples was not only a place of thought, but also of retreat, a sanctuary from the world that did not always welcome him. This solitude, painful as it was, became the soil where his genius would grow. At Cambridge, Newton's brilliance was unmistakable, but he was not the lively student laughing in taverns or mingling in halls. He preferred the stillness of libraries, the solitude of candlelit nights. His notebooks filled not only with equations and experiments, but also with confessions of self-doubt, lists of sins. He believed he had committed impatience, envy, anger. He was deeply critical of himself, measuring not only the heavens, but his own heart, and often finding it lacking. This habit of self-examination reveals something tender. The man who mapped the cosmos also wrestled with the quiet storms of conscience. The struggles of a genius are not only intellectual, but human. Newton often withdrew from others, consumed by his work, but also unable to bridge the distance his mind created. His friendships were fragile, his relationships strained. There were times he quarreled fiercely, his pride erupting like a sudden storm. At other times, he fell into silence, vanishing from social circles for months or even years. He could be cold, withdrawn not because he did not care, but because he did not know how to share the vast universe swirling inside him. Loneliness became both his wound and his fuel. It hurt him, yet it gave him the quiet in which his thoughts could bloom. Even the greatest minds live in the rhythm of small, ordinary habits. Newton often forgot to eat, so absorbed was he in his studies. Meals would sit untouched beside him, growing cold as he scribbled notes, his mind drifting among stars and forces. At times, he would speak aloud to himself, whispering calculations, as if the universe itself were a conversation partner. He carried quirks the way he paced in rooms, the way he scribbled endlessly, the way he left problems unfinished only to return to them with sudden clarity weeks later. These small habits remind us, genius is not a thunderclap every moment. It is long, slow rain scattered, repetitive, ordinary actions done with unusual devotion. For all his brilliance, Newton was deeply afraid of being wrong, of being forgotten, of being ordinary. When rivals challenged his work, he did not take it lightly. He fought with sharp words, stubborn defenses, sometimes lapsing into bitterness. These fears reveal a man who is not immune to the shadows we all carry. He wanted recognition. He wanted to be remembered. And though his discoveries would outlive him by centuries, he did not always feel secure in his own time. To see him this way is to see that genius does not erase fear. It lives alongside it, trembling but still moving forward. It is easy to think of Newton only as the man who revealed gravity, who gave us laws of motion, who guided ships and rockets. But he was also the boy who missed his mother, the man who feared rejection, the thinker who paced alone at night, chasing thoughts others could not see. His greatness was not in being flawless, but in being fragile and yet persisting. He carried loneliness and transformed it into discovery. He carried self-doubt and turned it into insight, carried imperfection and through it gave humanity a vision of perfection in the laws of the cosmos. And so, as you listen tonight, remember, the scientist who changed history forever was not made of unshakable stone. He was a person as human as you are. He had fears, quirks, habits, flaws. It was not in spite of these, but through them, that his greatness grew. For it is not perfection that creates history, it is persistence, fragility carried with courage, questions carried through silence. Take a soft breath and let that truth rest gently in you. You, too, carry questions, doubts, imperfections. And yet, like Newton, you carry the possibility of ripples that may travel further than you ever see. Long after Isaac Newton's footsteps faded from the halls of Cambridge, long after his quill fell silent, his thoughts continued to ripple outward, like rings on water. His discoveries were not merely answers to questions, they were openings to new worlds. When he described the pull of gravity, he did not just measure falling apples. He gave humanity a compass for the cosmos. He offered words where silence once lived, maps where mystery once reigned. And so, though centuries have passed, his name lingers like an echo across time. Imagine the night sky, a scatter of stars unconnected until human eyes draw lines between them. Constellations are not written in the heavens, they're written in our imagination. So too with Newton's equations. On their own, they were symbols, lines of ink on paper. but once connected, they became constellations of thought guiding sailors across oceans, guiding engineers to build bridges, guiding dreamers to send rockets into the sky. They shine still, those equations like stars eternal. The universe itself became readable, its language softly spoken through Newton's symbols. Every great idea travels, not as a thunderclap, but as a whisper carried across centuries. Teachers repeated Newton's laws to their students. Those students became explorers, inventors, dreamers. His words passed like a lantern in the night, hand to hand, century to century. A ship's captain, adjusting his sails. A farmer measuring shadows to track the seasons. A physicist tracing the arc of planets, all of them, knowingly or not, touched the light Newton lit. Take another slow breath and imagine those whispers still drifting now, through you. Consider how different the world would be without him. Without his laws of motion, engineering might have stumbled in the dark. Without his studies of light, optics, and astronomy would have dimmed. Without his gravity, the paths of planets would have remained mysteries, veiled in superstition. His gift was not simply knowledge, but clarity, a way for humanity to see itself not as lost wanderers, but as explorers in a knowable cosmos. Like dawn following night, his vision gave us light to travel by. There is poetry in Newton's legacy not only in what he discovered, but in how it endures. His ideas did not end with him. They became a melody woven into the lullaby of civilization. Every time a child tosses a ball and watches it fall, they are echoing Newton. Every time an astronaut gazes at Earth from orbit, they are cradled by his vision. Every time we look up at the moon and know why it stays, circling us faithfully, we are remembering him. Like music played across generations, his thoughts never truly stopped. They became part of the background rhythm of existence. And so Newton himself became like a star in history. Is sky one of those bright points whose light continues to travel even after the star has dimmed? His body returned to the earth, but his light travels still, unending, across the centuries. We do not always notice it, just as we do not always notice starlight. But when we pause, when we listen, when we breathe, we can feel it. A guidance, a presence, a reminder that one mind, fragile and human, can leave behind a radiance that outlives mortality. What is a legacy if not the rippling of one small stone into a vast pond? Newton's stone fell centuries ago, yet the ripples are still spreading. They touch satellites orbiting above us. They touch every bridge, every clock, every telescope. They touch the very way we imagine reality itself. And they will continue for as long as humanity remembers, for as long as we dream. So tonight, as you drift into rest, imagine the sky above you. The stars scattered there are not only burning suns, but also memories of those who looked, who wondered, who dared to ask. Newton's legacy is among them, carved not in stone but in starlight. Not locked in books, but alive in every motion, every orbit, every falling leaf. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you into sleep. For even in dreams, the scientist who once gazed at falling apples walks beside you still, his gift written forever in the stars. As we rest tonight, centuries removed from the life of Isaac Newton, his presence still lingers in the simplest of moments. The way you hold an object in your hand, knowing it will fall if you let it go. The way you glance at the moon and feel its quiet pull across the oceans. The way you trust that tomorrow, the sun will rise in its measured arc across the sky. All of these certainties are the gift of one man's vision. Because of him, we do not see the universe as chaos, but as rhythm. Not as accident, but as harmony. Not as unfathomable darkness, but as a map we can walk by. And so, though his body long ago turned to dust, his thoughts breathe with us tonight. Take a deep breath now, slow, easy, unhurried. The air filling your lungs moves with the same gentle obedience to the laws Newton described. The very act of breathing is a testament to gravity. The invisible thread anchoring us to the earth, keeping atmosphere close, keeping oceans steady, keeping life possible. Every inhale is a whisper from the 17th century, a reminder that one mind's clarity became everyone's home. Because of him, we breathe in a world his mind once dreamed. Look up in your imagination. See the stars scattered across the velvet dark. For ancient humans, they were mysteries. Perhaps spirits, perhaps fires, But through Newton's lens, they became companions, predictable in their orbits, bound by the same laws that guide an apple's fall. Because of him, we look at the stars differently. They are no longer unreachable lights, but part of the same family as us, subject to the same invisible embrace of gravity. In that recognition lies comfort. The cosmos is not alien, it is kin. Tonight, those stars are not distant. They are stitched to you by the same threads Newton traced centuries ago. Imagine the sea, the slow rise and fall of its tides. Long before Newton, people watched the ocean breathe without understanding its rhythm. They saw the moon glow, but could not imagine its hand tugging the waters of Earth. Newton gave the ocean its voice. He taught us that the moon, far above, is not silent, but speaks through the tides. And so, when waves reach the shore, they carry more than salt and foam. They carry Newton's legacy. They remind us that even the distant can touch us, that forces unseen shape every step we take upon the sand. Every road we walk, every building we enter, every bridge we cross, they stand not just on soil and stone, but on the equations Newton left behind. His laws guide the engineers who calculate the strength of beams, the balance of forces, the quiet assurance that when you lay down tonight, your world will hold steady beneath you. Without his vision, much of modern life would tremble with uncertainty. With his vision, we walk on steady ground. But what does it mean, really, for us here tonight? It means that knowledge, even from centuries ago, is not lost. It means that one person's struggle, loneliness, and vision can ripple across time until it touches you in the quiet of your own evening. It means that you are part of something vast, a chain of thought, of discovery, of memory. A human thread, woven from Newton's questions into your own life. When you wonder at the stars, when you trust the arc of a falling ball, you look at the horizon and know it will not vanish beneath you. You are part of the story he began. There is comfort in knowing that the world is not fragile chaos, but ordered beauty. Newton did not strip mystery away, he gave us a deeper one, a mystery with structure, a wonder with form. Tonight, when you close your eyes, you can rest in that certainty. The earth will hold you, the stars will turn, the tides will ebb and flow. Not by chance, but by a quiet music written into the fabric of being, his music. And yet, as we rest in his discoveries, we also see a reflection of ourselves. Newton was not superhuman. He was fragile, often solitary, sometimes fearful. His greatness was not in perfection, but in persistence. That, too, is his gift to us. For when we falter, when we feel small or unseen, we can remember that greatness does not require flawless certainty. It requires wonder, curiosity, and the courage to look again. If he, with all his struggles, could leave behind such light, then perhaps we too are capable of more than we know. So here we are, you, me, the stars above, the earth beneath, and with us, unseen but felt, the mind of Newton. Because of him, the night is not only a mystery, but a map. Because of him, the air we breathe is more than air. It is law, it is gravity, it is a gift. Because of him, the stars are no longer strangers, but kin. Take another slow breath and feel how his legacy threads itself through your very being. And as you drift toward rest, remember, his discoveries are not distant history. They're the ground beneath your feet, the sky above your dreams, the certainty in your tomorrow. And so, gently, we turn the page. From the life of one scientist to the lives of us all. From history's long echo to tonight's quiet breath. The circle is almost complete. Soon we will close our eyes beneath the watching stars, carrying with us the gift of Newton's vision, not just knowledge, but comfort, not just discovery, but peace. Like dawn breaking softly after the longest night, his legacy lights our dreams. The journey we have traveled tonight began with a child, a quiet boy gazing at the world with questions no one else thought to ask. We walked with him through wonder and loneliness, through discovery and doubt, through the trembling hush of genius slowly unfolding. We saw a world before him, uncertain and shrouded in mystery, and then we watched as his mind lit a candle that never went out. Isaac Newton's life, in its fragility and brilliance, reminds us of something timeless, that the universe is not only shaped by stars and gravity, but also by thoughts, small sparks within fragile minds. One person, sitting in stillness, asking why, can tilt the course of all who come after. His vision revealed the hidden threads of nature, the invisible embrace of gravity, the quiet order guiding stars and seas. Yet beneath that greatness was a man vulnerable, imperfect, often alone. And it was precisely in that humanness that his brilliance found room to grow. Take a slow breath and let that truth rest with you. Greatness is not flawless, it is fragile, human, and possible. There is something both delicate and immense in a single idea. Thought itself is as light as breath, as fleeting as a whisper, and yet thought can endure across centuries. Newton's questions, once private curiosities in the quiet of his room, now shape the orbits of satellites, the tides of oceans, the steps of every human walking Earth. It is humbling to know that something so fragile as thought can become so enduring. And it is comforting to know that the same fragile gift lives in us. The power to wonder, to notice, to connect, to dream. Perhaps you will not rewrite the laws of the universe. But perhaps in your own way, your questions, your kindness, your quiet observations may ripple further than you realize. For history is not only changed by the loud and the celebrated, it is shaped quietly by countless small sparks. As Newton once looked at the night sky, so did you. The stars above are the same. The silence is the same. The gravity holding you to the earth is the same. Time passes, centuries turn, yet the fabric of the universe remains a steady cradle. There is peace in that thought, a kind of lullaby, written not in notes, but in laws of nature. So as you rest tonight, feel yourself held in that same embrace, the pull of gravity anchoring you, the rhythm of breath steady within you, the vast dome of stars watching silently overhead. Newton's story is not only his, it belongs to all of us. His legacy is stitched into the way we see the sky, the way we trust the earth, the way we find certainty in tomorrow. He is gone, and yet not gone. His thoughts breathe on in the quiet of your night. And so, as you drift towards sleep, you carry with you not just the memory of a man, but the echo of his vision. Like constellations traced in thought instead of light, his discoveries are written across your world, invisible but enduring. One mind, one fragile, searching, restless mind. It is almost impossible to believe that such small beginnings could ripple across centuries, and yet they did. Perhaps in some quiet way your thoughts too will ripple forward. Perhaps someone, years from now, will walk a little differently because of you, your kindness, your question, your vision. This is what Newton's story teaches us. Not only the laws of stars, but the quiet power of being human. And now, let the journey settle. The story of Newton, the story of discovery, the story of fragile brilliance, it is complete. Close your eyes and rest beneath the same watching stars that once guided him. Feel the universe steady beneath you, vast yet gentle, ancient yet intimate. As you rest, remember the universe holds you gently, just as it once held him in quiet nights of wonder.